Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She comes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, August 5th. LA Galaxy penalty kick winners over Chivas at Dignity Health Sports Park last night on a Sunday night. A full house, 25,000 plus for a sellout. We're going to talk about that game, get you ready for that, or at least get you through that as we get you ready for the next game. LA Galaxy taking on the Seattle Sounders coming up on Thursday. We'll tell you what the podcast schedule is for this week, all that fun stuff. We want to go through all the details, all the fun stuff that we have today, and normally, I would be introducing a co-host at this point, but Mr. Kevin Baxter is still in Paris. I would like to point out that Kevin in Paris covering the Olympics, he has butt-dialed me twice. Twice. He has yet to actually call me on purpose to talk to me about anything that's been happening in Paris. So this is a solo show. For those of you who have been waiting for a solo show, you're here. This is it. I'm here. You're here. It's all we need. We don't need anybody else in between us. We're going to talk about some Galaxy soccer. We're going to talk about what could be an exciting week. There's this. I want to preface this by saying absolutely no inside information on this. It just feels like the whole Marco Reus thing is coming to a head, right? I mean, there's not that much time. Like, eventually you're like, this has to get across the line and things have to happen, or it has to go sideways and we'll all hear about it. It was 100%. This feels 100% like this should get across the line this week. So I feel like that's still a possibility. I feel like that could happen. So we'll talk about a little bit about that as we go along. But I'm glad to have you here. It's been a crazy. I don't know. Did anybody expect that game to be as intense as it was? This game didn't matter for the LA Galaxy. We all realize that, right? When we look at the LA Galaxy, we look at the position they were in. It was the position of they were advancing regardless of whether or not they beat Chivas, which they did. It didn't matter whether they finished first and second. In fact, if they finished second, they might have hosted a game instead of winning the group and having to go on the road. We'll talk about that and why that is. Yes, it's strange. You're not wrong. Yes, it's head scratching because you're looking at this as if it's like a real tournament. And I'll say, I think we still have to, at least in my case, I'll speak for myself on this. I think we have to say these games are more intense. They mean more than we think they do. You look at what Greg Vanney did with a rotated lineup, and listen, the Galaxy rotated the lineup and still got a win against a Chivas team that they're not great, but they're still one of the giants of Mexican soccer, which means they should spend a lot of money, and they usually overpay for the players they have. They've been tweaking their formula of only allowing sort of the Mexican nationals on there, and Cade Cowell is a U.S. national team player, or at least has been. And he is a guy now who's playing for them. And if you saw him play, I was actually really impressed with Cade Cowell and the header that he scored. But Chivas is a big team in Mexico. You can't say they're not. They haven't been playing well, much like the LA Galaxy. It's like you sort of go back and look over the last, X number of years, and you're like, they're not good. Like, they haven't shown that they're good in recent times, but they still spend a lot of money. I don't know what that means. Do you put Chivas in sort of the same sort of downtrodden way that the LA Galaxy have been since 2017? Probably not as bad, but there's something there. That they're not at the upper level, and it doesn't even seem to matter if you are an upper level Mexican team. in Leagues Cup because you're getting bounced too. And the Mexican teams are at a disadvantage for two reasons. One, it's way early in their season, and two is that they have to come to the United States and play. They tried doing the hub thing, which that's why Chivas was the home team at Dignity Health Sports Park, and it was funny because I think there were reporters who don't often cover MLS or certainly don't cover what the LA Galaxy do, and they're like, "Oh man, this feels like a Chivas home game." I'm like, it literally is a Chivas home game. So it's just interesting. I just didn't expect the intensity really to bring that all around. I didn't expect the intensity. I knew it was going to be loud. I knew it was going to be a raucous crowd. From everybody who's texted me and sent me in notes and little updates on how it was. There were fights all over the place. I was told it was not family friendly, and I'm not a person who believes that everything needs to be family friendly. I think if you were going to this game, you should have a pretty good idea. This was going to be one of the ones that's not family friendly. It had all the makings of a game where you're like, oh man, this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. Chicharito's back. He's out warming up. You're like, okay, Chicho's playing. He's back. He's going to want to play good against the LA Galaxy. So blah, 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 blah. You got there and it was like, and then he doesn't come out out whenever they announce the starting lineups, and he actually got hurt in warmups. So he was announced as a starter, but never came out. Conspiracy theory me says he was never going to play. But I don't know that that's true. I think he would have liked to play. Greg Vanney even mentioned something afterwards, said, I'm sure he's disappointed because I think he really wanted to play and come back and do this and whole deal. But it was just interesting. And I like this. Feel the berm. I didn't care until I was in my seat. Kind of the same. And then all of a sudden that whistle blew. And we'll talk about the lineups here in a second, but let's just talk about the atmosphere. All of a sudden the whistle blew and you were like, oh, this game is going to be like intense. You had Taylor Twellman and Jake Ziven, and they're talking about the intensity of the matchup. And listen, San Jose played and beat Chivas, in front of 50,000 people, earlier that week, and took them to penalty kicks, beat them in PKs, similar. And so, I imagine that atmosphere was, loud and raucous and whole deal. I'll tell you I remember I didn't go to this game, but I went, but from watching at home, the crowd was loud. It seemed like it was raucous. It seemed like it was intense. You had the cheering, you had the booing. They kept having to shut the field mics off. I imagine it's because they were trying to cut out swear words. By the way, I shouldn't say field mics, crowd mics. They had to cut them off all the time. Like all of a sudden they would be real high in the crowd line and just like that, almost dead air, and behind the announcers. And you're like, okay, that's an interesting sound choice and everything you're going to do. It's one of those things that you look at and you say, it was more intense than I expected. And then we get to the lineup. So let's jump into it, right? LA Galaxy trot out a lineup. It is a rotated lineup. We can look at Micovic starting. He's not always the starter, and we'll talk about how good he was, but Micovic in back and goal. You had Garces, and by the way, Micovic is going to be the Leagues Cup goalkeeper. That's how it's going to work. You had Emiro Garces playing his first minutes or getting his first start for the LA Galaxy. You had Eric Zavaleta, who hasn't played a lot of center back in a while, and I think everybody's probably a little happier about that than they should be, but Eric Zavaleta playing in there. Martin Cáceres is not, I believe, the first choice center back right now. Whenever it comes to pairing with Maya Yoshida, Maya Yoshida, we imagine he is being rested because the dude has played like every minute of every game almost for the whole season. You had Mauricio Quas in there. Cuevas is not an everyday starter. Gaston Bugman hasn't been a starter, is a starter whenever he's healthy, hasn't been a starter. The fact that he was able to go 90 minutes, by the way, was really something incredible. Usually you have to work guys in, but apparently he was roaring to go. He had 18 minutes in the game before, and he's like, I can go 90, no problem. Edwin Cerrillo. Technically speaking, when Brugman is back, Cerrillo isn't always a starter, although he has been playing in that starter role with Brugman out. So nothing there. John Nelson, that guy is covering from Julian Aude, but still a guy who's in regular sort of starting. And then you get the starters, Joseph Painsil, Gabriel Pec, Riqui Puig, all in there. So, there's more rotation in here than people would like to acknowledge. And having said that, if you're an LA Galaxy fan, this was a rotated lineup. Tell me that you could go back to like 2 years ago and this is something like a rotated lineup would look like this, and you would still feel okay about it, right? You would be like, oh yeah, Joseph Painsil. Joseph Painsil shouldn't be playing at the 9. It should be Dejan Jovalic. We can give updates on Aude and Jovalic. Jovalic closer, Probably not available in Seattle. Possible if the Galaxy extend past that Joveljic will be available. I would say don't count on that. I think they're shutting him down until the league comes back, which is fine. Julian Aude as well. I believe they're shutting him down until the league comes back. So you can look at this rotated lineup, which it absolutely is, and say, okay, the LA Galaxy are putting out a rotated lineup. They don't need to worry about this game as much. They're already through. It almost doesn't matter whether they go first or second, and Vanney was joking about that. Could have been second and hosted the game. But, win the group and go to Seattle. That sounds right. So you can see that, but the rotated lineup, that was perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with this lineup. You can look at the guys you could bring off the bench. Fagundes, awesome. Brady Scott, by the way, another goalkeeper night out there. So Brady Scott out there. You had Isaiah Parente, Miguel Berry didn't play. Jalen Neal got in the game. Mark Delgado was in. John McCarthy sitting on the bench there as the second goalkeeper, the third goalkeeper. Miki Amane on the bench as well. Tucker Lepley didn't play. So the Galaxy had all these choices. They had the ability to bring in game changers like Fagundes, really like Delgado, even Jalen Neal you could bring in, even Miki Amane. There was a lot of availability off the bench. And so for me, you're sitting there going, okay, so with a rotated lineup, what's going to happen? By the way, not just the rotated lineup, but if we go back and look at the starting lineup again, how did it lay out? Really, you had a three-man back line, more or less. It played more as a five-man back line, but Cuevas and Nelson shifting up. In attack, maybe more of a four in the back, because Nelson wouldn't go all the way up all the time. He would pick and choose where he wanted to go, but that would leave Garces back there with Zavaleta and Cáceres, and then Nelson, and then it would rotate out whenever Mauricio Cuevas would move forward, right? So a three-man back, but those three guys who haven't played next to each other, Cáceres, Zavaleta, and Garces, they don't play next to each other. Garces hasn't really played all that much. And so getting them in and getting them familiar against a Chivas team, again, that was motivated to try to move on in this tournament was a big deal. I will disagree. Let's talk about just the TV coverage. Some of you were in the stadium. You didn't have to deal with this. Some of us, me, was at home. I thought that for, a large portion of that first half, the LA Galaxy, if you were listening to, Taylor and Jake, you thought that they were playing the worst soccer you've ever seen them play. Meanwhile, I saw a defense that hadn't played a whole bunch together bend, but not really break outside of the goal that got played and, a little bit of a broken play even to make that happen. And by the way, Garces being overly aggressive probably caused some of his own problems there. So Garces had a hiccup, and then all of a sudden everybody's going, oh, I don't know about Garces. Outside of that first goal, tell me where you thought the LA Galaxy were just completely being played over their heads. It was true. Chivas was parked in the LA Galaxy's first half. But you could see that there was always the ability, and I think we talk about this with the LA Galaxy, is whenever they're playing against a team that's better than them, to not have the ball is okay for the LA Galaxy sometimes. I'm going to seize him if I'm going to sneeze here or not, because, of course, I probably will. All right, we survived that one. A little cough button goes a long way. But you look at what the Galaxy's defense was able to do. Look what the midfield was able to do. I thought Cerrillo was being tested a lot. I thought, Cuevas on the outside. I thought he played, had to play against Cade Cowell and going against him all night. That was a lot of work, a lot of things to sort of handle in that. I thought he did really well. People are sort of looking at Gaston Bugman as not having a good night. I thought he grew into the game, quite honestly, and I thought the change in formation helped him in the second half more than maybe anybody else, but just to sort of get him into a more comfortable, back four and sort of a rotation, into that forward and through that midfield. Bringing Mark Delgado in helps, those types of things can help. But you look at the LA Galaxy and I'm like, it absolutely, you could watch the LA Galaxy and you could say, yeah, they're not dominating this game. And while we all agree the LA Galaxy love possession, they don't have to have it. And I think that's the biggest change this year. And it's probably the biggest progression they've made throughout this season as well. The Galaxy don't have to have the possession because they have the ability to counter through Riqui Puig, counter through Gabriel Pec, counter through Joseph Paintsil, right? Now, Chivas score rather early in the game and the Galaxy come answer right back. And it's the same play that basically Riqui Puig has been playing for the last 2 games or 3 games, trying to find that overlapping run with Cuevas, with Pec tucking inside a little bit, Cuevas running to the outside, Cuevas timing it right. And by the way, if you were in the stadium, you didn't see, but Leagues Cup is using the semi-automated offside line. which means that there was a line drawn very quickly, and very quickly they were able to say that, Cuevas was onside. By the way, by, what could probably be inches was the decision on that. But great timing. Riqui Puig does his stuff. He puts it through the middle. Cuevas comes around, taps it across to Paintsel, and Paintsel buries it. The crazy thing about that is that Joseph Paintsel is late to react on that play. Go back and watch the replay. Watch how long he sort of sits into that center mode instead of attacking whenever he needs to, but he's able to, with his speed, sort of make up for it, close down, and be able to put that ball in the back of the net. Great square, nice touch from Mauricio Cuevas. Everything there worked out exactly the way it was supposed to, and that's the LA Galaxy. In the goals that they scored, they were able to do it quickly. They were able to do it without too much effort. And so it's a really exciting thing to see that the LA Galaxy can score quickly, can make progress in a formation that's different, and come out and play against Chivas. I mentioned Garces, but we had to focus on him for a little bit. Garces. So I talked about him giving up that first goal and probably being a little too aggressive on it. His man was able to spin in behind him and basically score, but there was also a broken pass there that got deflected into it. So it's, it is. As a defender, I'm always like, what are you going to do? You try to make a good play and a ball gets deflected and right into the path of somebody else. It was a good play and a good goal. Garces probably had the best night as any defender on the LA Galaxy, maybe outside of Micovic. Micovic was my player of the game. I think everybody agrees with that. Micovic stood on his head. He did, and I think I can agree at least that Chivas probably should have scored more goals than they did. I thought Micovic played really well. All right, and we'll see if Micovic can continue to do that stuff. All right, because there's a lot of argument now that maybe Micovic is trying to overtake McCarthy. It's just everybody chill out. All right. As my son keeps coming in to try to interrupt everything. So you can see where this goes with Micovic and how his progression is, but Garces is probably the one that we haven't seen any of. Garces is probably the one that we need to see more of whenever it comes to it. But what did I see whenever I watched Garces? Body positioning is outstanding. And you're starting to see just his ability to put his body in between places. I think he has some technical ability, although there was some talk on the broadcast like he's not great with his feet. And I thought there was one pass that sort of was close on Micovic where maybe you probably should have hit it a little bit harder. But I didn't see Garces missing passes, which he didn't. I didn't see Garces, putting balls into dangerous positions outside of that back pass to Micovic. And listen, if you're a defender, that's going to happen on occasion. I thought he felt pretty comfortable. Talking to people, he's still rusty from where he's at. So you can expect him to get even better whenever it comes to all this stuff. So he needs to get better. You need to see him sort of expand this. But the obvious answer here is his recovery speed means that he doesn't have to be perfect. We talked about this with AJ De La Garza so many times, which is if you're a really good defender and you put yourself in good positions, you shouldn't have to chase the ball down, right? If you're a really good defender and you have speed, when you do make the occasional mistake, you can make up for it. And if you didn't see the play where Garces ran like 40 yards back to take the ball off of a streaking Chivas attacker before he even gets to the top of the box, then you miss probably one of the plays of the game. Because it was absolutely a wonderful run. He was caught up the field a little bit. The ball started going. He was a good 12 yards behind him whenever he starts that run. Garces is behind two other Galaxy players that are closer to the ball than he is whenever it goes. Right? And so he's able to come back and run and cut that off. So I really like that. He has a physical presence that I think the Galaxy are maybe missing sometimes. Able to get his head on the ball, able to anticipate where the ball's going to be, able to win balls in the air. The physical presence, the body positioning for me is advanced level. It's not there. Like, you're not like, oh, he's a finished product. You're like, this could be good. And so for me, if you're taking anything away from this, there's probably two things that you should take away from the night. Maybe three things. One, intensity was really good. Micovic was outstanding, and Garces may be the real deal. Maybe there was the reason the LA Galaxy were like, yeah, we'll take him on loan. Oh, wait, no, we're going to purchase him outright. And every time I get talked about it, and they're like, oh, the Colombian, he's, in Colombia, he was like one of the fastest defenders in the league. and that's an attribute to him certainly that you can see is there. But I think there's a lot of technical ability for him as well. We talk about the LA Galaxy possibly getting ready to whenever they need to sell Gabriel Pec, right? And you're like, oh, as a young kid with all this talent, like really the sky's sort of the limit. There's gonna be a market for somebody like Emiro Garces as well, and I think that number could be a big number as well if he pans out the way that everybody's sort of talking. Again, rusty. We've only seen him for a little bit. He got injured in this game, actually. Greg Vanney said afterwards that he rolled his ankle. And so that's another one of those. Rolled the ankle. We'll have to see how he goes day to day. The other one we were watching with that was Diego Fagundes, who ended up playing and playing in this game. So I'm sure the ankle is at least well enough to be able to be played on. So I can see sort of that going forward with Garces. I was very, very impressed. The moment wasn't too big for Garces, and not that I would expect it to be, but there's a lot of people in that stadium. It's a pretty hostile crowd. You're going against one of the better teams in North America, right? In the grand scheme of things, better teams in North America. So it's a big deal to be starting and play that. So I am very much impressed with Emiro Garces. I mean, I was impressed. We can go through the guys. You could sort of go. We have to talk about Micovic as well, because 3 or 4 outstanding saves, came out, controlled the box, was pretty stellar. I don't remember any mistakes where you're sort of like, oh, that was a mistake or anything of that nature. Was calm, quiet, collected in the back. And, I mean, what else are you going to ask for him? You go to FOTMob and they had him as an 8.3. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I thought he played really well. The 2 goals that were scored on him, the first one, nothing he could do whenever you let the ball get into that position and that space in the box, and you're going to come out and you're going to try to, and hopefully you get a piece of it. If you don't, you don't. The second goal, by the way, Cade Cowell. This is going to be a Cade Cowell appreciation minute. Guy was frustrated for most of the game. Was clearly, it felt like one of their faster players, one of the guys they wanted to get the ball to. I thought Mauricio Quas did a really good job of keeping him sort of stopped in a lot of this stuff. So I thought it was actually a really good sort of play from Cuevas to do all this. And then you go in and you watch, and that goal that Cade Cowell scores, probably because Garces has to come out, probably because Parente was already coming in, and probably because Mark Delgado slides into the right back spot, that it's not marked perfectly, but it's not a bad marking. I'm sorry, if you're going to cross a ball into the basically just outside the top of the box on the near post and a guy is running, it's like, oh, well, that header's not going in. That header does not go in, and Cade Cowell scored that. So I'm not going to put that one on Micovic. I thought that was an amazing goal. If the Galaxy would have scored that goal, people would be talking about it for a long time. I think because it was Cade Cowell, nobody wants to talk about it. I thought he was really good. I thought that Micovic was outstanding on the night. I think he's going to continue to push through this season and sort of be like, maybe McCarthy's gone next year type thing. Maybe McCarthy slides into the number 2 if that's what he wants as well, right? So we'll see where it goes. But I by no means am I like, oh, the changing of the guard is here. I don't think it is yet. I think Vanney's still going to go with experience, but you can't deny Micovic playing outstanding on the night. I thought he was really good. Riqui Puig had his normal problems, right, that we've seen for so many times. And I think everybody's used to him now, right? We're used to seeing him try to force passes. We're used to seeing him hold on to the ball too long. In that first half, especially in sort of a different formation, I thought he dribbled into danger too many times. This is what Riqui does. He makes passes and he makes things more difficult on some of his teammates. All of that was important, right? All of that was sort of the buildup of what Riqui Puig was going to do. Second half, Riqui Puig, by the way, much better. Galaxy going to a little bit more of a back 4, and everything sort of evens itself out in the midfield. You get Diego Fagundes in there, so you really get sort of these things that sort of calm everything down, and then Riqui Puig is able to be sort of his Riqui Puig self and find some of those passes and do some of the stuff that he needs to do. I have no knocks on Riqui Puig. I thought he was getting into it. Again, we haven't talked about the referee, but horrible refereeing through most of that first half, where you don't give out yellow cards when they're warranted. And when you don't give out yellow cards, then you have a problem where the players are going to take care of it themselves. So Chivas is like, we can't track Riqui Puig, so we're just going to start fouling them. They did. No yellow cards come out, and all of a sudden you have a problem. There's little, some shenanigans, some fisticuffs a little bit to push and shove and do all these things. And it's like, good. The one where there were 2 yellow cards given to Chivas, and the one where Riqui basically had been fouled, was about to get fouled, got the ball, moved around, passed the ball off, got the ball back, and then was taken out, and that's the one everybody took exception to. There were a lot of people, including the broadcast, who was like, oh, the last thing you want to do if you're the LA Galaxy is get into a shoving match with Chivas, and it just benefits them. I'll say this. Normally I'm in agreement. You need to be smarter than that. You need to do these things that are smarter than that. Having said that, in this particular situation, the absolute right play was to back up Riqui Puig in this, right? Show him that you have his back, push back, show Chivas that, yes, you may think this is your home game because it says so on the score sheet and all your fans are here, but this is still our place. I don't mind some of that. I don't want you to go out and start like taking swings at people, but establish that you're not there to be pushed around. And I thought the Galaxy actually really did a good job of that. Was establishing we're not here to be, pushed around. We're going to be difficult to beat. And you guys may have a lot of the possession, although the Galaxy had a lot of possession in the first half. It finished with the Galaxy, I think, 51-49. But the Galaxy had a lot of possession in that first half, and then in the second half, they started playing better, but gave more possession to Chivas in some ways. So you can see that sort of play out. But I thought that was the right play, backing up Riqui Puig. Don't let him feel like he's out there alone sometimes, because when he feels like he's out there alone, Riqui Puig wants to do everything himself, right? And quite honestly, he was doing a good job of annoying them, right? I mean, if Riqui can take fouls in a mature way without always like hopping up and wanting to fight, I know it's sort of like maybe it's a little short man syndrome sometimes, but I really like Ricky's fire and everything going on. But you sort of like, if he could take fouls maturely, which is you just fouled me and I'm winning this game. You just fouled me, and that's another sort of check mark against your name. So if you try to do it again, you might get a yellow card. You do it again, you might get a second yellow card, get a red card. If Riqui can develop into that maturity level, then him getting fouled is not as big a deal as it currently is, because problem is he gets fouled a whole bunch. He's not getting the calls, or he is getting the calls and yellow cards aren't coming out. Riqui gets frustrated. And when Riqui gets frustrated, then he tries to do too much, and then he overplays a little bit, right? Yeah, I think the Galaxy only had like one foul. They only committed one foul in the first half. Maybe a little more of that. I see that. Patrick was, we need to out-foul every team that comes, to Fort Diggs, right? He's not wrong. You do need to have a little... It would be nice for the Galaxy to have smartly fouled in some of those situations. But again, I thought that they were doing a pretty good job of frustrating Chivas. So I think it worked out. I want to talk about Gabriel Pec. And not that he had a monster game, because I don't think he did. But the maturity that we're seeing from him right now is pretty impressive at 23 years old, right? His goal that he scored in that second half. First of all, I think there's been sort of a knock on Gabriel Pec that everything is always to the near post, right? We're always talking about it. Gabriel Pec pretty much shoots to the near post. He'll be on that right-hand side. He'll cut in. He'll hit his left foot, and he's really shooting most of the time for the near post. He goes far post sometimes, but majority of the time, that's near post. Well, he gets the ball. He cuts inside. The near post is sort of blocked. He doesn't have a lot of room. He can't take a big windup whenever he scores this goal, but he hits it just hard enough. He passes it into the back of the net. And that's a skill. I don't care what anybody says. As somebody who's definitely not a professional athlete, anytime I would take a shot, I'm like, gotta hit it as hard as I can. Like those types of things. That's not the correct way to do it. Don't teach your kids that. There's always a time and place for power and placement and everything else. And sometimes all you need to do is just pass the ball into the back of the net. Gabriel Pec, that was one of the easiest goals I think I've ever seen him score. He was like, I got this. I'm cutting inside, and here's my pass in the back of the net. Nobody shut me down to that far post, so I'm going to take it. So we're seeing a development of these guys. We're seeing a confidence build. Tell me you didn't see the LA Galaxy's confidence out there build as that game went, especially they're winning 2-1, right? Now, I always thought it was going to be difficult to close that game out and keep it before 2-2, but the Galaxy didn't need to win that game outright. They knew that just getting the penalty kicks won them the group, right? And so it almost didn't matter in that terms, although I think they were working really hard to keep it that way. The Cowell header, I don't think there's a lot of people in MLS who make that play. Maybe that's just me. That's sort of those things that we can look at and say we're seeing development. I think we're seeing maturity from Paintsel. Painsel's not playing his normal position. He's up at that number 9 position. He doesn't like that position. We all know it. Dejan Joveljic comes back and everything can go back. But by the way, Dejan Joveljic comes back. Everybody gets pushed back. Diego Fagundes gets less minutes. You're going to add somebody like Marco Reus who then is going to fit in there somewhere, maybe for Riqui Puig. Maybe Ricky's going to start getting some breaks. That's probably a positive more than anything, right? But it's really hard to take Riqui Puig off the field too. Let's see how that plays out. But that's what I saw in this. I didn't think this is sort of like a recap of what you think after you look at the game. You watch the game, you experience the game, you know what happened, you listen to the coaches, you can listen to what the players said, you can take all that in, and then you have to go back to yourself and say, what did that game do that was surprising to me? And I think if I'm going to take anything from it, it's that Leagues Cup is more important than the fans make it. And Leagues Cup is more important than I certainly make it to be. And yes, I think it's a made-up tournament and all these other things. But you can't tell me that those two teams, Chivas and the LA Galaxy, weren't out there battling to try to bury each other. Right? At one point, it was like, I don't even care what happens with this. Greg Vanney needs to be thinking about pulling everybody off the field and forfeiting this game because it's getting too chippy. It's too up there. Chivas was getting too frustrated, too many fouls, too many cheap shots, trying to slow things down. I mean, the amount of yellow cards that were missed in that game, probably you'd have to count on two hands. Particularly late in the game whenever Joseph Paintsel is getting ready to break away, and a guy just wraps his arms around him and stops him from doing it like it isn't a yellow card in every league at any point in time. And everybody was just like, where's the yellow card? And the referee's like, let's play. And, on it went. So, but you can't tell me that wasn't intensity. You can't tell me that everything that Greg Vanney sort of tried to go out into that game. Remember, he was level setting. I'm going to rotate. But I want these guys to know what it feels like to be in a knockout tournament. I want these guys to know what it feels like to be, quite honestly, in penalties, right? We haven't even talked about the penalty kicks yet. I want these guys to know what it feels like ahead of the playoffs to have to play for your lives. And this was not the game to do it in, but somehow it ended up being the correct game for all this. So I don't care what happens because we're going to talk about going up to Seattle and what that means for the LA Galaxy and how that works. I don't care about that game anymore. Your Leagues Cup mission was accomplished. Mission accomplished. You did it. George W. Bush would be very happy. Mission accomplished, right? Mission accomplished for the LA Galaxy. That's exactly what you wanted to have happen. There was not a single player on that LA Galaxy side that wasn't ecstatic whenever they won those penalty kicks. Go back and watch. Watch how they react to it. Tell me it doesn't matter to them. Way more intense than I expected. Way more learning ability. And somebody in the Discord, and they were talking, it was like, you have to be able to turn it on in games that maybe don't matter sometimes. Because if you can do it then you're sure to be able to do it whenever you need to, whenever they do matter. And for the Galaxy to get up for a game that I would have been like, hey, just lose this game. It doesn't matter. Get out of it. Who cares? You're out. The whole deal. But to win that game, to win it in penalty kicks, to knock Chivas out of the tournament, to let in San Jose in the tournament, all of that stuff matters. And it mattered more than you thought it was going to matter. So that it's weird to look at. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, 100%, I don't think the Galaxy should get on the plane to go to Seattle. How about that? Just forfeit the game. Who cares? We're done here. We mission accomplished, like I just said. Done. That's not what's going to happen. All right. But having to go up and play on turf is about the worst thing that you could possibly do in this scenario. And we'll talk about how that actually works and how Seattle finished second and the LA Galaxy finished first in their group. And yet Seattle will be the hosting team. So we can't underestimate the competitive nature of athletes. And I think that's an understatement. And you're like, yeah, no, really? Gee, thanks, Josh. I listened to 33 minutes of this podcast, and that's what I got out of it. No, I get it. But what we saw on Sunday night was an LA Galaxy team that was capable of winning a playoff game. And I don't know that we've seen that. Very much, at least, in these last couple of years. Right? Even when Zlatan was there, even whenever the Galaxy went and beat Nashville, went up to LAFC and lost in the playoffs. You can't tell me they had this intensity, this focus, because they didn't. And we can measure that. And I don't know when the last time I think we've seen that sort of intensity. And I don't know. Don't want to make too much big a deal about it. I'm just saying that I was surprised. And I think if you remember going back to The Athletic, they did a survey and they talked to, chief soccer officers and the whole deal. And they were talking about Leagues Cup. And it was I remember one of the responses was something to the effect of, I didn't think I would like it, but I did. Like, I didn't think it was going to matter, but it did. And that's sort of, I guess that's the paradox I find myself in. I didn't think it was going to be an intense game, and it was. And you just don't get that many of those games. And so for Greg Vanney, what he was trying to get with these guys and why the starters stayed out, I know there were people who were like, pull the starters. The whole day. Why did the starters stay out? Why did the LA Galaxy stay out there in pretty much a first team set in that second half all the way through until penalty kicks? Because they wanted that experience, and I think they got it. So we can talk about it because there's going to be, listen, the Western Conference is getting better. You're seeing players starting to come in. RSL just got a new DP, right? You know that LAFC has Olivier Giroud coming in, right? And, possibly Antoine Griezmann coming in. There's going to be a time when there are 3 teams at the top of the Western Conference. They're all battling for it, and you have to figure out whether you want it more than everybody else. That sounds stupid. It sounds easy. Do you want it more? Well, I'll tell you. The LA Galaxy in past years probably didn't want it more. And I don't think you can say that about this year. I don't think you can't say those guys aren't going to go leave it all out there. Now, does it mean they're going to play a good game? It doesn't. Doesn't mean that even for a second. Doesn't even mean that for, a minute. You can't say that. You don't know what you're going to get a lot of times. You're probably going to get some pretty good effort, though. You're starting to get that ability to where these guys want to win every single game. And I think that's kind of what we saw. Look, let's go to penalty kicks even, right? Mike Amane, great. Gabriel Pec, great. I'm trying to see. I have to go to the real one because, MLS didn't actually put them in the order they scored. Gabriel Pec comes up, scores his, no problem. Cade Cowell on the other side scores his, so we're all even. Diego Fagundes has his saved. Not missed, but saved, right? So you're like, okay, no problems. Mark Delgado nails his. By the way, Greg Vanney said that Diego Fagundes never misses in training. So it was one of those where he was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Mark Delgado coming in. He scores. Joseph Paintsel scores. Riqui Puig scores. Miki Amane scores. Is this an LA Galaxy team that knows how to take penalty kicks, boys and girls? Is that what we saw? Because the LA Galaxy that usually you sit there for penalties and you're like, oh man, I don't know who's going to play and who's going to score, just outplayed, I would say a very experienced Chivas team in penalty kicks. And Micovic is a reason for that. Made the one big save. They got saved by the post and the other one. By the way, Micovic almost had another one. Remember the one that went off the top of the bar and came down and hit him in the back or almost in the back of the head and rolled in? That one wasn't on frame either, right? So Chivas didn't do a good job, but the LA Galaxy took care of business. Super vital, really important that the LA Galaxy were in this penalty shootout. I think you have an expectation that, hey, we won this, we can do this, we can go forward. We're not going to be afraid when we get in that situation. It sounds stupid. These are professional athletes. They've all been in penalty kick situations. They said Miki Amane was his first penalty kick ever taken in his career. He made it. So maybe he has the confidence now. It's a really interesting game from the perspective of try looking at this game through last year's lens, right? And you see the LA Galaxy playing against Chivas. Remember the LA Galaxy who didn't win a Leagues Cup game last year? That LA Galaxy team coming into this one, winning 2 of them. So LA Galaxy win the group. That was the big takeaway from all this. We can go to, one of my favorite moments. For those of you who didn't know, Cosmo, our favorite alien, was not allowed to be down on the field. And I don't think was allowed to be sort of in the stadium for most of the night because it was a Chivas home game because Leagues Cup rules, right? You can't have, if it's a home game, you can't have the other guy's mask out there. So he couldn't be there. So who do you see standing on top of the American Express Club after the LA Galaxy win? Cosmo. Does it get better than that? Waving the flag up there? Cosmo's like, hey, I'm not on the field. You can't get me. Technically, I might not even be in the stadium. I don't know where this roof is. I don't know. I'm not a cop. Excuse me while I take a drink. So yeah. I think that was a great sort of thing. By the way, Gary, $2 super chat. Rad game, rad pod, all as well. Gary, love you. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Somebody just asked if I still feel like there's a piece missing from this team. I don't remember where it went. I saw it for a second. And there it is. Raul. Josh, do you still feel like there's there's a big piece missing from this team? I don't know. Yes. I would like to see depth. I don't know. There is an argument. And I don't know how to put this. There's an argument that the LA Galaxy, I guess, don't have that big game-changing, I'm going to take over the game player. I don't know that Marco Royce is going to be that, but he could be. It's one of those, I'm just not as familiar with your game, Mr. Royce, yet. So he could be, and I don't know how he's going to react to playing in Major League Soccer, right? So I would, in depth wise, I think there's an agreement that we would all expect that the LA Galaxy would possibly try to shore up a second striker outside of Miguel Berry, but Miguel Berry keeps doing Miguel Berry things, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and denigrate the good name of Mr. Miguel Berry, not after the Pele joke. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's still some little things here and there. I would love to see a better destroyer in the midfield, but that's more of an upgrade than a big piece. I'm more on the depth side of things. If you wanted to get somebody who could take over a game, if you wanted to put a striker into this team, they could take over the game. Like if you could get Zlatan Ibrahimovic all over again, and you could put a striker. The LA Galaxy might be favored to win Major League Soccer. So if you're asking about like what upgrades could you sort of make, maybe that stone cold striker that is a big name, a big body, and just puts in goals like there's no tomorrow, right? Because you're getting feeds from the Galaxy now, right? It's not like Zlatan would be star for service. Having said that, I don't think you bring Zlatan onto this team. I think he'd wreck it. That's a personality issue. But, could you go out and find that big striker, that big guy, that big name, big time, big player? What is it? Special plays, special players, special teams, right? Is that what it is? So that's sort of where I sit. I would like there to sort of be that game changer. Although Riqui Puig can play the game changer, I think Gabriel Pec, if he keeps going the way he is, he can take over a game. But show me somebody who can carry this team whenever they need it, right? Landon Donovan, and I know, let's go back. I'm old. What can I say? Landon Donovan or Robbie Keane used to be able to pick this team, put them up on their back, and just do whatever they needed to do to get the win, right? It was like, hey, the team's not playing that well. Oh, Landon's going to score from, 15 yards out on a curler, and it's going to be sort of against the run play, but the Galaxy are going to win, and then, they're going to have good enough defense to make it happen. Robbie Keane's going to create this chance that nobody really thought he was going to be able to create. He's going to shoot, he's going to score, and, that's going to be sort of, the Galaxy weren't playing very well. Again, it's whenever the Galaxy aren't playing well that I sort of see the change. So for me, I don't know that there's a big piece missing, but I'm interested to see how this team does with Marco Reus. They've really tried to go out and get him, and they've focused on him for a while. I feel like this is all going to get across the line this week. Again, no inside knowledge. I will tell you whenever there's inside knowledge, there's not. I'm just telling you that at this point, I'm like, this week sounds good, right? Just like everybody else. So that's where it is. Gary, $2 super chat. Favorite Olympic sporting event? Are we doing summer just because it's the Summer Olympics, or winter, or can it be either? Because I like the Super G in winter is like one of my favorites to watch. Those guys going down the mountain with like out turning. If you've ever been skiing or snowboarding and you feel like you're going really fast, you should have somebody hit you with a speed gun whenever that happens, because you're probably going like 18 miles an hour and there's guys going 80 miles an hour down a hill. So I always thought that was interesting. Let's see, Summer Olympics favorite sport. Well, I do enjoy the women's soccer, actually. I wish that, and although it's different and it's exciting and you can sort of watch it, I know that's sort of a cop-out, but I wish that the men's teams would be senior teams. And I know it's like, oh, no, it's because you don't want it to compete with the world. Well, the women do it. The men can do it, too. To me, I think that would be a lot of fun, but that's one of those things. I don't know. There's a lot. There's so many good Olympic. I can turn on anything. I can watch gymnastics. I can watch, figure skating. I was watching field hockey today between Australia and China. That sucked me in. I like watching sports that you don't see all the time. Did you see the American road race rider for on bicycle that was in the road race, and she was like a late addition, and she wasn't even supposed to be on the team because somebody had to be scratched and the whole deal, and she went out and won it. I mean, there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun things out there. So, and there's stuff you don't get to see every day. Beach volleyball. I was watching that tonight before I came on the podcast too. It's just fun to see the different ones, to doing all the different events. And there's events out there that you don't even know I watched skeet shooting for a little bit. That was fun. Any of the pistol events, they're actually too slow for me. They're not that exciting, but I know people can get into those as well. So, the rugby sevens, right? There's a good one. I didn't even know. It was like before, I didn't know I was a cricket fan until I watched USA Cricket, do something. You're like, oh, look, USA Cricket, they're good. I didn't know I was a rugby fan until I watched the ladies in the rugby sevens, right? So it's a lot of fun to sort of watch all that stuff. So I have a good time. I love the Olympics. I love the idea. If you watched in gymnastics and the two American ladies, is it Sunny Lee and Simone Biles were there, and then the Brazilian, who I don't know, and I should know better, she came up and they were like bowing down to her and stuff. Like, it's just really fun. I love Olympic moments. I don't know. I'm a sucker for the sentimental. By the way, there is a little sentimental from the game, and not to make this a segue that needs to be segued, but I think it's important to point it out, is when Gabriel Pec scores, he goes and celebrates with who? Juninho, right? And everybody knows Juninho. Now, I mentioned on Twitter that Juninho serves as Pec's translator whenever we have him at press conferences. So whenever there's a press conference and Pec comes up, it's Junie who sits at the table when we ask our question. Junie translates it from English to Portuguese and then back out to us, that way we can do it. So Junie is there. Mike Munoz, who's with the LA Galaxy, obviously, sort of hit me up on Twitter as well. He goes, you don't see all the other stuff that Junie does too, but like Juninho is responsible for Gabriel Pec being set up here in Los Angeles, from being comfortable here, from being based and grounded here in Los Angeles, so that way he can go out and do stuff. And it's Juninho who's made him feel comfortable. So you want to talk about an unspoken hero so far this year. Look no further. With the language barrier and everything, Juninho is like, on full-time call for Gabriel Pec, whatever he needs, really. And I don't want that to sound like subservient. It's not, but Juninho is doing this for the betterment of the LA Galaxy. So you need to pay attention to those things. And Mike is 100% right. By the way, Juninho, I'm one of my absolute favorite people in the whole wide world. Still to this day, Juninho, Marcelo Sarvas, tell me a double pivot that ever worked better. And don't actually, I just like living in my own world where Marcelo Sarvas and Juninho were the best midfield pairing that, ever to be in Major League Soccer. But still to this day, I'm like, I don't know that there was a better one. No, a lot of really fun things. Let's see. Jorge, $2 super chat. He says FC 25 brings back MLS shootouts. The old school MLS shootouts, man. They're still fun to watch. If you ever go back and watch any of those early Galaxy games and stuff like that, and see the penalty shootouts where you dribble and do all that fun stuff, it's pretty crazy. Scott, by the way, hope you're doing well. Love to see you. $5 super chat. Love the pod. 2 of my favorite days of the week. Hope everyone is healthy. I love the Olympics. That bicycle ride was awesome. It was. Just watch her. 3 kilometers. She takes off. She's gone. Right? So much fun. So much fun. But yeah, I don't want to underplay Juninho. And if you guys are looking for like the hero behind the scenes, like one of those guys, Juninho is one of those. But by the way, the entire coaching staff, I think it's Zach Marchetti. I always say his last name wrong, so I'm trying. But Zach works so hard. He's in charge of making sure the team has their hotels and their flights and all this. But I mean, everything else that needs to be happening as well. I think he's a team administrator, if I remember correctly. But everything else that has to happen as well, from green cards to passports to driver's licenses, I mean, you name it. And Zach makes it happen. Again, unsung heroes. There are so many. Whenever a team is playing great, it's not just one person. Look, I want to show you this locker room, and you can see that I have the picture of the LA Galaxies. I think Kevin Hartman is trying to just like troll us all at this point. Like every time he's in a picture, he's doing something. But Hartman's off there. But look at how many people are in this picture. Right across, right to left, back to front. Everybody, Junie right there, by the way, standing next to Gabriel Pec. Gaston Bugman has the belt. They're all screaming. They're all happy. You got Will Kuntz, who's like 17 feet tall, standing in the back. You would think he's standing on a chair or something. Nope, that's just Will in the back. But you look across that. Look at every single one of those people. It's probably not fair to say that they haven't had this support in past, and I think they have. But I think it's fair to say that you didn't have everybody pulling on the same end of the rope. And right now, you have everybody pulling on the same end of the rope. It matters. We talk about it matters. Like, you don't have to have teams that like each other, but the really good ones usually do. This team loves each other. Look at them. They are awesome. By the way, you had... why can't I even think of it right now? But you had Cáceres, by the way. I had to go look up his name because I was blanking on it. You had Cáceres. Cáceres is without a shirt on again. Just wanted to point that out. The guy never has a shirt on. But it's, again, just something to watch and pay attention to. So those are the things that I saw from this LA Galaxy team on a night where they weren't supposed to care. They cared the most. And because they cared the most, because they played the hardest, because they were able to do it, they took down Chivas. You can say whatever you want about it. That game was the LA Galaxy's to lose, and they didn't. Maybe they took it to penalty kicks. Maybe you're upset about that. Maybe you want to see them close it out. I don't know. Again, the broadcast was very defense. They were like, oh, the Galaxy can't play. I thought the Galaxy played great defense under some severe pressure at the time. I thought the midfield gave up the ghost a couple times. I don't need to hear, and it's fun because we get to talk on a regular basis, you and I. So we know that the LA Galaxy had a set piece problem. We also know that the Galaxy haven't had a set piece problem for a while. And so you're starting to see that come around. We heard and we saw that the LA Galaxy were one of the worst defenses, right? That was giving up the most goals against. We know the Galaxy are, 6th, 7th, 8th in goals against right now in Major League Soccer. They're not even close to the end. We know they're one of the top offensive teams. Right? So again, we can look at these things because we watch this team every day. We have the ability to know that the Galaxy are progressing past what they were at the beginning of this year. And so if you're just paying attention to the beginning of this year, you're not. You don't know what's going on. Right? And at some points in that broadcast, if you listened, I thought that it was, oh, the Galaxy are just, oh man, they're going to get killed. I don't know. Maybe it's that we've watched too much LA Galaxy soccer. I'm willing to say that. Maybe it's a bias that we've seen too much LA Galaxy soccer to know that this team is very good at bending. How many times have the LA Galaxy lost this year? You can count it on one hand, right? That's saying something. There are 8 games left in the season. That's how many times the LA Galaxy have lost. Now, we can go forward. Let's see. I know I have some little things. By the way, I always love it whenever a good admin can get the last word in. San Jose Earthquakes tweeted out, "We are through. Quakes hosts blah blah at PayPal Park." Right, the whole deal. And the LA Galaxy quote tweeted and said, "You're welcome." By the way, San Jose responded to that with a thumbs up. I'm not sure that would have been my play, but it's been a tough season in San Jose for them. Alex Ruiz pointed out. Emiro Garces versus Chivas, 45 of 45 passing, 5 of 5 tackles won, 4 clearances, 2 blocks, 4 recoveries, won 6 of 7 duels. You want to have dueling stats? Let's do it. Emiro Garces, who made his first career start for the LA Galaxy in the penalty kick shootout win against Chivas, completed 47 of 47 passes. Remember, there was talk that he wasn't that good with his feet. 47 of 47 passes. Recorded 4 clearances and won 7 of 8 duels, 5 of 5 tackles, and 4 possessions in 86 minutes of action. Then got hurt. We're going to watch him and watch his progression. All right. So that's one of the things that you want to look at. I saw in the chat room somebody asked me about Garces. Go back and listen to the front part of this because I pine for Emiro Garces. I thought he played really well. Let's go to the schedule now. The LA Galaxy will face off against Seattle coming up on August 8th. That is a Thursday, right? 3 days from today. So that's a Thursday night game. I imagine that game's going to kick off at 7:30 p.m. That's my guess. It'll kick off at 7:40. TV will start at 7:30. It'll be on MLS Season Pass. I haven't seen it a whole bunch of times. I haven't seen the timing yet, but it could have gotten confirmed in the amount of time since I got home and whenever I started to do this. And then the LA Galaxy, of course, will restart the league coming up on August 24th. We've told you we have something special coming up on August 24th. We are planning a live show on August 24th. I'm giving you the ahead of everything sort of details, so that way you can plan on being there early. So get your stuff ready. If shall it all work out, and I should know by the middle of this week whenever we do our next podcast, whether or not it's 100%, but right now it's like 95%. So I'm willing to tell you guys to make sure you're ready for Atlanta coming up on August 24th, and that we were planning on doing a live show from the stadium there. So we'll let you know where everything is. All right. So that's coming on. So Seattle's up. Now we're going to talk about the bracket and everything that's going on. The LA Galaxy over on the west side, they were the West 2 winners, and so they're going to take on Seattle. Seattle is going to host that game, however. Now, the reason that happened, and the fun reason that happened, is basically because there's seeding involved. And the seeding, I always like this. Let's see. I'm getting text messages while we're doing the show, so I always like to do it. Yeah, yeah, 100%. I was all over that, by the way. The seeding that we've seen is based off of last year's finish in the league. So the LA Galaxy are seeded like 41st. All right. So Just plan on the LA Galaxy. And you would say, well, in the knockout round, it shouldn't matter. The seeding should go away. Well, that's not what they did. Okay? That's not what they did. They decided that they were going to do it this way, so that way there could be some, I guess, predictability, but they also wanted to make sure that the Mexican teams had hubs and bases for which they could play, so that way they didn't have to travel as much, which was probably the right thing to do. But usually seeding works for the group stages. You're out of the group stage, and now you're in. So the winners of the West, too, have to go play the second place team, which is Seattle, in one of the other West numbers. I forget, West 3, West 4. I don't remember which one it was. And that's why Seattle will host, based not on their finish, but based on their seeding. And that's it. That's why. You don't have to go any further than that. Don't stress yourself out. As much as I just told you that this tournament matters more the more I watch it, it's still a made-up tournament, and they made up rules in order to make up the tournament, and these are the made-up rules they made up for the made-up tournament, right? This is those things that you watch. Now, that means that the LA Galaxy, lucky LA Galaxy, Greg Vanney said afterwards, he goes, Scott French asked him a question about, hey, and how does it feel that you have to go on the road now, even though you won? Greg Vanney goes, yeah, explain that one to me, right? And he was like, he goes, I know it's based off of last year and last season. He goes, so last year's the season that just keeps on giving, right? So a little sarcasm there from Senor Vanney. Understandably, it's if you win your group, which you did, you shouldn't have to be going to the second place teams. You should get a home game, right? Which is not what's happening. So that's sort of the layout as it goes. Right now, the Galaxy are in a round of 32, basically, that is going to show you that the LA Galaxy and Seattle, should the LA Galaxy win that game, they would play the winner of Pumas Vancouver, right? Necaxa and San Jose are in that bottom part there, and then it's LAFC and Austin. So you can sort of do this and say, oh, look, quarterfinal matchup possibly between the LA Galaxy and LAFC, if the LA Galaxy get that far. Now, I'm going to advocate that the LA Galaxy forfeit this game and don't even go up there. I think your mission accomplished at this point, and obviously this is not going to happen. But the worst case scenario for the LA Galaxy is, 1, having to go on the road, and 2, having to play on Seattle's turf. It is a nightmare scenario. It is the one where you sit there and go, please, just don't go, right? Have you ever seen those rom-coms and the woman is going, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go. I just got a bad feeling. That's what you should all be saying that. You are the woman right now. You are telling your husband, your boyfriend, your significant other, do not go out that door. Something bad is going to happen in a movie. Something is, right? But you're talking about the nightmare scenario. Seattle in the turf. That's it. Now, I guess you're happy that, granted, it would be difficult in that group, but you're happy that you're still in the same time zone. So you're not looking at jet lag issues. You're not looking at too much travel, although that flight to Seattle is way longer than you think it is every single time. But you look at that and say, that's not where you want to go. That's not where you want to play. I don't think anybody should be upset should rotation happen again, because the turf is not a place that you want to be right now. And you don't have to be, right? We can go look at the LA Galaxy's last games here. They play away to St. Louis. They're home against LAFC. Away to Portland, that's a turf game. The LA Galaxy hosts Vancouver, away to Colorado. So the Galaxy have one turf game for the remainder, but they're adding another one. You want to play the least amount of times on turf as you possibly agree. Alex, by the way, calls out last time we played Seattle, didn't they purposely not water the field? I thought they did. Real sticky field out there. Real sticky field. Let's see. Injury updates. I think we have all. I gave you all the injury updates at the top, right? So you have Dejan Jovalic, who possibly could be back, not this round, but the next round should the Galaxy advance. Otherwise, I still feel like he's coming back whenever the league starts back up. Julian Aude not coming back until the league starts back up. The other injury update was on Garces, and Garces rolled his ankle. Greg says going to have to see day to day. Like, we don't know, right? Basically, when injuries happen right away, unless the bone is like sticking out of the skin, it's usually like, we don't know. We're going to have to go in. We're going to have to take scans. We're going to have to see how they recover. The same was with Diego Fagundes, which was, we don't know. He rolled his ankle. Hopefully he'll be okay. Greg said, I thought it was going to be more short term. Diego comes out and plays, right? So this is what I'm saying, is that the LA Galaxy have a mission accomplished in what they were trying to do in Leagues Cup. We talked about them getting to this. And at one point, I think we said, you want to get one more game past this. At this point, I don't know. Me personally, I am more of a league person. I'm going to focus on the league. Like if I'm a head coach, I'm focusing on the league. 8 games left, focusing on the league. It's hard to take the fight out of this LA Galaxy. Tell this team to roll over. That's the hard part. It's like, hey guys, just go out and roll over. They're not going to do it. So anyway, that's sort of the next thing that goes up. Here's what we're going to do, however, as the clock strikes 9 o'clock here. And it's about 100 degrees in this room now. Here's what we're going to do. We're planning on having a podcast on Wednesday night, okay? Because I want to get you ready for that game against Seattle. I think the hammer is in for Wednesday night, so we'll be able to do it Wednesday night. So game on Thursday night, so not going to be able to do that. And I didn't want to do one on a Friday. That doesn't make sense to me. So I think we're going to be okay going Wednesday night. So get ready for Wednesday night. All right. That's when we'll do our next podcast. So a little shift in schedule, but Thursday night soccer mandates a little shift in schedule. All right. Anything else that we need to talk about? I think that's it. Again, I have no inside information. I just feel like the time has finally come for Marco Reus to be announced. So should that happen this week, I would not be surprised. Announcements are usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Can they be on Fridays? Yes. Can they be on Mondays? Yes. Usually, if you have news of this magnitude, do you wait for the day? Yes. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All right? All right. Glad everybody agrees. I hope you enjoyed a solo show. I didn't have to yell and scream. That's what the LA Galaxy have done to me this year. They have turned into a good team, and I don't have to yell and scream whenever I get by myself, as I talk about. Most of the time, my solo shows are amplifications of my feelings. They slowly turn around inside my head, and I get more and more amped up as the game goes on. But this LA Galaxy team, maybe they're bringing in a new serene Josh Guesman to everything. Anyway, want you to put on your calendars August 24th. I'll give you more details as soon as I can. I probably shouldn't have even said this, but I have some other surprises in there as well. So again, August 24th, we want to see you out there. That's it. LA Galaxy will take on Seattle coming up on Thursday. We'll get game times, all that fun stuff. Podcast on Wednesday night. Kevin, as soon as the Olympics are back, will be back with us. Should have Hammer on Wednesday night. All right. I think that about does it. So usually I say to the other person, take us on out of here. But in this time, I'll say, I'll take us on out of here. So if you're looking for me on Twitter or X, it's at Jay Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast. Head right on over to SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, any places, Google Play Store, any place you can find a podcast. That's where you can type in Corner of the Galaxy. Head over to the YouTube. Follow us. We're almost at 3,000. We want to get to that number. Put a thumbs up on the videos. We always like that. That helps us grow. And thank you for all the super chats tonight. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. Sorry I missed you on Sunday night, but I should be on the rest of the home games, almost all of them for the rest of the year. So we can talk about that as we get a little bit closer. Podcast on Wednesday night with the Hammer. We'll get you ready for the Seattle game in Leagues Cup. All right, Galaxy winners over Chivas in Leagues Cup. They're advancing on to the round of 32 now, away to Seattle. We'll get you all ready for that the middle of the week. For not Mr. Kevin Baxter, because he's in Paris, and he's not calling me anyway, so I don't have to be nice to him. I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.